any person to belong to an organization, but public resources should not be used to collect dues for a private political organization. And I would also, because I'm aware that this is going to be online, I would also like to say that I think that any teacher who's a good teacher and thinks that they don't need the union to negotiate should opt out of the union. And I would encourage that. The time is now to do it while there's no contract. So I would like to just say that to anybody out there that thinks they can negotiate on their own behalf, and they should certainly opt out. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments? Okay.
Adam Manchik, East Rock Hill. I would like to, despite the comments of, I think what is a minority opinion in which we just heard, that remind people of what unions have done in our country. Without unions, we'd probably still have children working in sweatshops. If you look, you can see what not having unions in the public would do right now. If you just look at states like Arizona, West Virginia, and Oklahoma, where they had wide teacher walkouts, like wide range, that they can't afford meals, they can't afford, they don't get anything. And that's what's going to happen here if we do ignore the unions, if you do have teachers opt out. So I just want people to keep that in mind. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments? Good.
We just heard two comments on opposing things about the unions. I want to point out that there are two different types of unions in this country. One is with private industry. Those unions have to strike and ask for benefits within certain bounds because they know that ultimately their company has to be competitive, not just with other domestic vendors, but international. So they limit their demands by the fact that their host company has to stay in business and be viable. The public unions have no such restraint placed on them. With the stroke of a pen, 9 people in this community can raise taxes. Now they are limited somewhat by the state, but they are not limited by any condition of bankruptcy of anybody or anything like that. You don't see it. It happens over at the court. So there's a huge difference between the two unions. My home state is West Virginia, and yes, those teachers walked out. My mother was a teacher, and trust me, she worked for practically nothing, although it was back when everybody worked for nothing. But that state's tax base was devastated by the war on fossil fuels. And the population doesn't have the jobs, doesn't have the economy it once had, thanks to certain policies, again, by the government. So the government doesn't restrain itself. And so when you look at the two unions, when he talks about child labor, there were never any children working for the government. They worked in the coal mines. So let's remember, we've got two different unions, we've got two different safety issues, and it's not the same animal. So to sit here and say, oh, well, if it weren't for public unions, we would have child labor, that's false. That was in the private industry. It's been fixed. And again, the private union has a restraint that that host company has to stay in business or they all lose their jobs. Government union workers don't feel that pressure. So you have to restrain the taxation based on the fact that you are impacting every household in this district. Thank you.
Any other questions or comments? Okay. I'd just like to, again, thank everyone who applied and took the time to submit all of your information. We really appreciate it. I'm hopeful that we can find other ways to get you all involved. And we really had a tough choice. There were many of you that I would have supported tonight. So, and I'm sure others feel that way as well. We really appreciate you getting involved and your time. I think that's all we have tonight. Make a motion to adjourn. Do I have a second? Seconded by Ms. Kildare. All those in favor?